The first time the bell rang, Charl Voss believed there had to be someone inside the tower. The second time, he knew there was not. He stood alone in the center of the abandoned village, staring up through the mountain fog as the iron bell swung behind the open arches of the church tower. The rope moved beneath it. The wooden frame groaned, and each toll rolled across the empty houses like a warning. There were no villagers in the streets, no priest inside the church, no hands pulling the rope, only Charl, the wandering animals, and the darkness pressing in from the surrounding mountains. Hours earlier, he had found the village register behind the altar. Dozens of names had been written across its final pages. One by one, they had been crossed out. Now, the register lay open again. A new name had appeared beneath the others. Charl Voss, and the ink was still wet. But to understand how his name came to be written there, the story must begin on the road 3 days earlier. In October of 1613, Charl Voss was traveling through a remote mountain region on his way to the trading town of Dornheim. He was not a soldier, although he carried a sword. He was not a priest, although he had spent enough time questioning priests to know when one was hiding something. Charl worked as a traveling magistrate, sent between settlements to investigate disputes, collect testimony, and deliver sealed orders on behalf of the provincial court. The journey to Dornheim should have taken 4 days. By the afternoon of the 3rd, however, the weather had turned. A low fog moved down from the mountains and covered the road. The path disappeared beneath mud, wet leaves, and shallow running water. Charl's horse became uneasy. It stopped twice, refusing to continue until Charl pulled hard on the reins. Shortly before sunset, he reached a fork that was not marked on the route given to him. The wider road bent south. The narrower path disappeared between pine trees. Charl studied both directions. The southern road looked recently damaged by rain. A section had collapsed into a ravine, leaving barely enough space for a man on foot. The forest path appeared older but passable. Believing it would reconnect with the main route beyond the ridge, Charl turned his horse into the trees. Within minutes, the fog thickened. The forest became silent. No birds moved in the branches. No animals crossed the path. Even the sound of the horse's hooves seemed swallowed by the mist. Charl continued for nearly an hour before he noticed a faint orange light ahead. At first, he thought it was a traveler's lantern, and another light appeared, and another. The trees opened. Below him lay a village. It was small, perhaps 30 or 40 homes, built along a muddy road that led towards a stone church. A bell tower rose above the rooftops. Thin smoke drifted from several chimneys. Warm light glowed behind a few windows. Charl felt immediate relief. He could ask for shelter, food, and directions back to the main road. But as he rode into the village, that relief began to fade. No one came to meet him. No dog barked. No child ran into the street. The first house had its door standing open. A lantern burned on the step. Across the road, a cart had been abandoned at an angle. One wheel sunk deeply into the mud. A sack of grain had split beside it. Chickens wandered freely through the road, pecking between the stones. Charl stopped his horse. "Hello." His voice traveled between the houses. No one answered. He rode farther. The village appeared inhabited, yet empty. A cow remained tied behind a stable, pulling weakly against its rope. 2 goats moved through an open garden gate. Laundry hung wet beside one cottage. Smoke still rose from a chimney near the center of the village. Charl dismounted and approached the nearest home. He knocked. No response. He called again, then pushed the door wider. Inside, a bowl of thick vegetable stew stood on a wooden table. The surface had formed a skin, but it had not yet gone cold. A cup lay overturned beside it. One chair had fallen backwards. Near the hearth, a candle had burned almost completely down, leaving hardened wax across the table. There was no sign that the house had been searched. No cupboard had been opened. No valuables appeared to be missing. The occupants had simply left. or had been forced to leave. Charl checked the second home, then the third. In one, a child's wool coat lay beside the door. In another, bread had been placed in the oven and forgotten until it blackened. A small wooden horse lay in the mud outside. At the blacksmith's workshop, the forge still gave off faint heat. An unfinished horseshoe rested beside the anvil. The hammer had been dropped on the floor. Charl placed his hand near the coals. Someone had worked there that day, perhaps only hours earlier, yet there was no blacksmith, no apprentice, no one at all. As darkness approached, Charl began noticing other details. Bundles of garlic hung above several doors. Small wooden crosses had been nailed into window frames. Red thread had been wrapped around handles and latches. Some homes had dried mountain herbs scattered across the thresholds. These were not decorations. They were protections. Charl had seen similar customs in isolated regions before. People used charms against sickness, bad harvests, restless spirits, and creatures believed to move between graves after dark. He followed a narrow path behind the houses and found a shepherd's cottage near the edge of the village. Its door had been torn partly from its hinges. Inside, the furniture had been pushed against one wall. Deep scratches marked the inside of the door frame. A dark stain spread across the floorboards. Charl crouched and touched it carefully. Blood, but not enough to suggest that a man had died there. A trail of smaller stains led towards the entrance, as though someone injured had been dragged from the room. Near the bed, Charl found a torn strip of cloth. 2 small blood marks appeared close together in the fabric. Bunchers. He stood slowly. The sun had vanished behind the mountains. The fog now moved through the village streets. Charl decided to find a local priest. The church stood at the far end of the road, built from dark stone and older than the surrounding homes. Its doors were locked. Charl knocked several times. Nothing moved inside. He walked around the building. Every window was closed. At the rear, he found a smaller wooden entrance reinforced with an iron bar. A symbol had been scratched into the wood as circle divided by 3 lines. Below it, someone had written words in faded charcoal. "Do not ring for us." Charl stared at the warning. Then he forced the lock. The church smelled of cold stone, wax, and damp timber. The altar remained prepared for worship. Candles had burned down in their holders. Several pews had been moved against the main door, as if the villagers had attempted to barricade themselves inside. Charl found no bodies. Behind the altar, a narrow cupboard contained church records. Most were ordinary documents: births, marriages, deaths, baptisms, and land agreements. The final book was different. It had been wrapped in black cloth. Charl carried it to the altar and opened it. The first pages listed families who had lived in the village for generations. The settlement was called Velin. Charl did not recognize the name. He had not seen it on any map. Near the back of the register, the writing changed. The neat records became hurried and uneven. Names appeared in a single column. Marta Hein, Lucas Brandt, Tomas Pilcher. Tell us more. Many had been crossed out with a single heavy line. Besides several names, the priest had written the same words. Taken before dawn. The date showed that the disappearances had begun nearly 6 weeks earlier. At first, one villager vanished every several nights, then the gap shortened. Every second night, then every night. The last page contained only 5 names that had not been crossed out. Below them, the priest had written, "We ring so that their souls may find the road home." A later sentence had been added beneath it in darker ink. But something else hears the bell. Charl heard a noise outside, a low growl. He took his lantern and stepped from the church. A dog stood in the road, thin and covered in mud. It stared past Charl towards the mountain. Its teeth were exposed. Its body trembled. Then something moved between the trees above the village, too quickly to identify. The dog gave a sharp cry and ran beneath the abandoned cart. Charl raised his lantern. The forest became still again. He returned to a house near the village square and secured the door. He considered leaving immediately, but the mountain road was already difficult in daylight. In darkness and fog, it could become fatal. He fed his horse, lit 2 candles, and placed his sword within reach. For several hours, nothing happened. The silence was worse than noise. Charl could hear the animals moving outside. Occasionally, a goat cried from one of the gardens. A loose shutter struck against a wall. Shortly after the 2nd hour of the night, every animal in the village became quiet, not gradually, all at once. Charl sat upright. Then the church bell rang. The first toll shook the windows. The second sent dust falling from the ceiling. By the third, Charl was already outside. He ran towards the church. The bell swung high above him. The rope moved through the opening in the tower floor, but no one stood beneath it. Charl forced the church door open and followed the rope towards the stairs. The narrow staircase twisted upwards through the stone tower. As he climbed, a memory returned to him. Years earlier, Charl had spent a winter night in a roadside tavern near the eastern border. An old soldier had been drinking alone near the fire. The man claimed to have fought in mountain regions where people spoke of the dead returning from graves. Different villages used different names: Revenant, Night Walker, Blood Drinker, and in certain valleys, Strigoi. The old soldier said such beings did not always appear as rotting corpses. All looked too thin, too pale, too fast. They fed upon blood and left their victims weak, confused, and drawn towards the mountains. The soldier had spoken of one village that rang its church bell whenever someone vanished. The people believed the sound guided the stolen soul home. But each time the bell rang, the creature returned sooner. The bell did not frighten it. It revealed where the living remained. At the time, Charl had dismissed the story as drunken folklore. Now the bell was ringing above him, and the village beneath him was empty. Charl reached the top of the tower. The rope moved violently, but no hands held it. A cold wind entered through the open arches. Deep scratches covered the wooden frames supporting the bell. A dark smear marked the rope. Blood, old and dried. On the wall beside it, someone had carved a message into the timber. We rang for their souls. Below it, it hurt us. The bell stopped. Charl looked down into the village. For a moment, he saw nothing. Then a pale shape crossed between 2 houses. It moved upright, like a man, but its limbs seemed too long. Its head remained lowered. Charl raised his lantern. The shape stopped. Although the distance was great, Charl felt certain it had turned towards him. Then it disappeared behind the blacksmith's workshop. Charl descended the tower and barred the church doors. He searched the remaining records until he found pages written by the priest. They described the first disappearance. A shepherd had failed to return from the mountain. 3 nights later, he came back. He was alive, but barely. His skin was pale. His lips were dark. 2 marks appeared beneath his jaw. He died before sunrise. That evening, his grave was found open. Soon afterwards, his wife disappeared. Then his neighbor. Then 2 children from a nearby house. The villagers began ringing the bell whenever someone was taken. But the priest realized too late that the disappearances increased after each ringing. Families attempted to leave Velin. Some returned hours later, claiming the road had led them back to the village. Others entered the forest and were never seen again. The final entry had been written by a shaking hand. The road will not release us. Charl closed the book. He understood now. The villagers had not abandoned Velin. They had been trapped inside it. Some were taken from their homes. Some fled into the mountains. Some may have hidden inside the church until the final night. But in the end, every name had been crossed out. Charl waited until the eastern sky began to lighten. Then he returned to his horse and left the village. He chose the widest road leading downhill. Within an hour, he passed a small stone shrine beside the path. A dead tree stood behind it, split by lightning. Farther on, he passed a marker carved with an arrow. The road descended through the forest. Charl believed he was finally leaving the mountain. Then the fog parted. The same stone shrine stood ahead of him. The same dead tree leaned above it. Charl stopped. He turned his horse around and chose a second path. This time he followed the rising ground towards the west. The sun climbed higher, though its light barely entered the fog. After 2 hours, Charl reached a wooden bridge over a narrow stream. He crossed it. Less than an hour later, he reached the same bridge from the opposite side. His horse refused to continue. Charl left the road entirely. He led the animal through the forest, using the rising sun to maintain direction. The trees became denser. The ground sloped downward. Then he heard chickens. Charl pushed through the final line of trees. Velin stood below him. The village had returned him to where he began. The forge still glowed faintly. The animal still wandered through the mud, but the church door now stood open. Charl entered the village slowly. The dog beneath the cart was gone. His lantern remained burning outside the house where he had sheltered. As he approached the church, the bell rang once, a single toll. The sound rolled across the rooftops and faded into the mountain. Charl entered. The register lay open on the altar. He had left it closed. The final page now contained another line beneath the villagers' names, Charl Voss. The ink shone in the candlelight. Still wet, Charl reached towards the page. Before his fingers touched it, a black line began forming across the name. It moved from left to right, slowly crossing him out. Church door closed behind him. Charl turned. Something stood in the darkness near the entrance. It was tall and narrow. Its skin appeared almost white. Its face remained hidden beneath long wet hair. Charl drew his sword. The candles went out. Charl Voss never arrived in Dornheim. The court waited for him for several weeks before sending riders to search the mountain road. They found no horse, no belongings, and no signs of an attack. They also found no village called Velin. No official map recorded it. No tax register named it. No church authority admitted that such a place had ever existed. Months later, traveling merchants began reporting the sound of a bell in the mountains. Some heard it after sunset. Others heard it through heavy fog. A few claimed they saw warm lights between the trees and a road leading towards a small village. Local guides refused to follow it. They warned the travelers that a bell may be rung for the dead, or it may be rung to tell something in the darkness that a new person has arrived. And somewhere beyond the mountain fog, the bell may still be ringing, not for those who vanished, but for whoever finds the road next. This has been the final statement. The story you have just heard is fictional, but the fear behind it comes from centuries of European folklore stories of revenants, strigoi, and things believed to return from the grave in search of blood. This has been the final statement. Do you believe the bell trapped the village? Or was it calling the creature each time someone new entered Velin? Share your theory in the comments. Subscribe to The Final Statement for more cinematic mysteries, forgotten legends, and stories that should never have been discovered. Until the next statement.